Welcome to episode 2 of the Daniel's Nemesis podcast, reading XBook, chapter 2, The Story According to Ginger, part 1. With that earnest music out of the way, welcome back to the Daniel's Nemesis podcast, in which I read through a book called XBook that I wrote many a moon ago. I then analyse the text and look at the me that I was over a decade ago, trying not to reveal too much that will spoil your enjoyment of the rest of the story. If this is your first time listening, well, you haven't missed much at all, so there's no need yet to go back and listen to the previous episodes to catch up to speed. For those returning, here's a bit of a recap of what happened previously, and don't worry about spoilers if you haven't listened, as nothing's happened yet. So, last episode, we floated around space a bit, whilst I discussed COD philosophy and how bad war is and stuff. This episode, however, is going to introduce us to our new human hero, Ginger Jeeves, RAF pilot adjusting to the new peace after the First World War. I'll be honest up front and say that we are not going to be thrown straight into the story, but at least there will be a bit more going on than in the previous chapter. If you want to know more about the book and this project that I'm now recording as a podcast, be my guest to go back to the previous episodes and listen to those first. After all, context-wise, listening to things in order does help with the appreciation, and this is not really a podcast that one can listen to any old random episode when they feel like it. Though I'm sure there will be many who will. As ever, I would like to point out that all events and characters in this book are fictitious. For the opposite to be true, I would have needed to do some research. And as you will find out, that clearly didn't happen. Enough spiffle, here is the first real story chapter. Just remember, this is fiction, always fiction. Logic is as logic does. December 15th. The Story According to Ginger, Part 1. There can be no better pilot than me. I'm proving it right now, up here in the sky, doing what I do best. Flying my craft. I've knocked up 75 kills. I'm the hero of the squadron. People look up to me. Literally at the moment, seeing as I'm a good 100 feet above people's heads. You see, it only takes a good pilot to be able to fly this low, as I swoop down. But there's another reason. At a lower altitude, you can see their adoring faces, their oohs and their ahs, though you can't hear them. I'm out here on my own. It started off as a group show, with others of my squadron in the air, recreating the battle that made me famous. I am a celebrity now. It was 4-1. I should have been dead, facing up to the best pilots that the Bosch could throw at me, but I came away alive. And now that I've killed my best friends, the best we had to throw at the enemy, it is time for me to fly solo, to prove my worth. I am adored and loved. This is the best that I can give them. But I don't want to get too big-headed. Besides, I'm running out of fuel, so I'm coming in now. I've landed, but waiting for the aircraft to slow down. I can see the crowd running towards me. I stop as they approach the camel. I get out, though I can't climb down, as there are too many of them. Instead, I'm on them as they carry me away, chanting my name, Ginger, Ginger, Ginger. Ginger's my name. They know who I am. Of course they know who I am. I'm currently the most famous man in Britain. I will always be the most famous man in Britain. Me, who fought so famously in the Great War. There can never be a war so horrid as the Great War. Therefore, I will always be a national hero. Me, Ginger Jeeves. They know that as much as I know that. And they love me. They adore me. What can I do to stop it? I walk now into a room, into a big room if big comes to describe it. It's the sort of room occupied by someone who thinks very highly of himself. As it happens, the plaque on the door says Flight Lieutenant Johnson, but a sense of glory has washed over me now. I want this room. And as I come into this room wanting it, I begin to look around, noticing it properly. I've only been in here a few times before, now that I've been relocated back in Britain, but I want it now. There are big windows at the other end of the room to let as much light in and show off as much as possible of the room. That is, as far as the light can reach. There is not much in this room, only a few pictures around the walls and a big table just in front of the windows. That will change. I'll put up my own pictures. I'll place memorabilia around the room to remind me of my glories. I don't need much reminding, but they'll be there. The journey to the table is the kind of journey that for anyone not particularly wanting to be there, they'll have plenty of time to regret their presence. The journey for others will become a trip down memory lane, my memory lane, seeing pictures of my first aircraft. There are still pieces of them somewhere. I can have them placed here. In this room. I'll have a secretary in this room. A nice sexy one. You don't get too many female ones in the forces, but I'll have one. A sexy one. And she'll be the envy of every female in the country. The secretary to the most famous man in the country who is not the king. King Ginger. Nice. There is a man sitting at the table. He is wearing an officer's uniform with lots of medals. So many that they jangle as he moves. He is Flight Lieutenant Johnson. Time to open my mouth. I speak. Spiffing bit of flying there, don't you think, sir? I remain standing. There isn't too much choice as a flight lieutenant is sitting on the only chair in the room, soon to be mine. There are rumours that he will resign soon now that the Great War has ended. Says the flight lieutenant. What ho, Jeeves, Spiffing flying, you say? Yes, well, try shooting down the Bosch next time, what? El Flighty speaks with a big booming voice that you would normally associate with a man of his rank and size. Poor man, though. Career man like me, but not prepared for the stress and agony of the last 4 years. Excellent service record before that, though. I reply, Jerry's? But the blasted war bloody well ended a month ago, sir. No time to humour the poor confused bastard. Ah, yes. Damn shame, don't you think? Now then, what do you jolly well want, Me, sir? Well, I'm here on your request about my holiday leave, sir. Damn well needed as well, sir, and I plan to take it. There's a glint now in his eyes, a strange one. His eyes narrow as if he is planning something, yet his whole body moves back as if it has been taken surprise by something. A holiday? At this time? What the bleeding hell are you thinking of, Jeeves? I booked it ages ago, of course, years ago. I'm a career man, unlike many of the other pilots. In fact, I don't think there is a single other pilot in his squadron now who joined before the war. But I booked my leave for the first Christmas after the war. 2 weeks off, and the first summer as well. A month in total. I could be like many of the others, quit the force and go back to their old jobs, but this is my old job. And I intend to stay on. There's still plenty of work to do, and there'll always be need of an RAF now that we have an organised force. I'll work my way up through the ranks. One day, I will be sitting in that chair. He is a confused old chap, though. Can't handle a job. I would have thought now that the Great War is over, sanity would return, but it hasn't, yet. And so a reminder is needed. It's Christmas in 10 days, sir. I booked the time off. Check if you want. If that's not good enough for a holiday, then what jolly well is? After all, it is the season to be jolly well jolly, sir. The days of peace are still but fresh. Any risk of attack cannot be ruled out at such an early stage. I would like you to stay, just for this time. You are the best. I don't want to take any unnecessary chances. Best pilot, au naturel. Maybe sanity is returning. Good point, but... Sir, the Germans are disarming. They have practically no air force or even any weapons when it darn well comes to that. They don't have a pistol, let alone an air force. Yes, but these are still paranoid times. We must still be wary. What if the Americans were to attack? I cannot help but form a small smile on my face at this. He just about knew who he was fighting against. He didn't even know who we were fighting with. Not that they really provided us with much help. Good chaps, though. Really knew how to throw a party. But sir, the Americans were on our side, remember? Aliens? I have no idea if he's being serious or not right now. But I burst out into laughter. A right-in-your-face kind of laughter. They don't even exist, sir. Technically, all invading forces are aliens. But I presume he's talking about the outer space kind. The kind that you read about in all those poor children's stories. The kind that you can see at the cinema. Probably saw a film with aliens and thought it was a newsreel. But cinema, now there's an idea. Maybe I'll sell the rights of my story to Hollywood. Turn me into a millionaire overnight. Make me incredibly famous. But I'd need somebody to play me. Who? It would have to be someone heroic. Douglas Fairbanks seems like a good choice. Maybe I could go for a surprise casting and get Chaplin to play me. Wouldn't work though, I'm not that clumsy. Besides, With the level of resentment towards him at the moment for not fighting for his country, that would not be a wise casting. That bloke who played Tarzan, oh no, Lincoln, I think. He's nice and muscular, looks fantastic. But about twice the size of me. £200. I'd like to see him get airborne. It would have to be me playing me. Ah well, beggars can't be choosers. The flight lieutenant cuts off my thoughts, bringing me back on track. How do you know? Have you ever seen them? He suddenly has a very weird glint in his eye. He's moved forward and he whispered the last word. I think he knows something I don't. Not hard though with his mind. I'm sure the pixies tell him all sorts. Just the force of the stare makes me slow down and I become much more serious. I have to place my words calmly, purely in order to try and get what I have to say to sink in. Of course I haven't seen one. Otherwise I would believe in them. And even if they did exist, how would they get here? By Sop with Camel? I think not. Jolly well possible. They're aliens. They can do anything. Mad. Simple as. Very well isn't possible. I start getting more aggressive now, and I try and bring the point back towards home. Well, here's another darn good reason for my leave. There's no war now, sir. Having been alive for the entire 4 years, I think I jolly well deserve it, don't you? There's a pause. He just stares at me. I stare back. But at times, it feels like he almost slips out of my view before I haul him back in. He digs out a diary. He was the one that called me in here, just for this pointless exercise. But he takes one final, bitter act of vengeance. He crosses off 4 days in the diary. Oh, all right then. You get 10 days starting from the 23rd. But if the aliens attack in that time, then it's all your fault. 10 days. I've got 14, and I'm taking 14. It's not like he can chuck me out of the Air Force or anything. I'm too well respected. The nation would kill him. Thank you, sir. You're so kind. I smile. It's intentionally overplayed. Oh, and just one more thing. Yes, old bean. My crate, sir. It's got a bit of a problem that needs to be sorted. Awfully quickly does it need sorting. I smile again through forced aggression. He only really serves one function these days, and that's certainly not to order us about. Might just as well abuse his services for everything I can get. Can it wait until you're off on leave? He seems tired of me now. Tired of my presence. As long as the aliens don't attack, sir. I can't believe it. I'm sinking to his level. I'm actually humouring the bastard, going along with one of his jokes. I presume it's a joke. I bloody well hope it's a joke. But I'm going along with it. Why? The plane I've got at the moment is a dump. I need something sportier, more manoeuvrable. I can't do fuck with what I've got at the moment. There, see, what did I tell you? They do exist. No, he actually looks like he means it. That's the problem with men like the flight lieutenant. Too much money. So many posh schools. So little room for education to filter in. Too much money. I was joking. I have to say this as stern-faced as I can possibly manage. Slightest hint of humour on my face, and he'll be off for hours. Now, back to my crate. We'll see. What's the problem then? He's gone back to his paperwork, no longer really paying much attention. Well, sir, it's a bit technical. A matter to go through with the mechanics. Shouldn't require much. Just the tightening of the nuts and bolts. I'd do it myself, but we've got to give the mechanics something to do. I smile again. Bollocks. It's a shit plane. And I want something newer, faster, better. I keep dropping hints like this to the old fool. I'm the fool for even bothering. It'd be better just to tell him straight off. I want a new aircraft! Flighty continues going over his paperwork. Wings loose again? Well, what's the problem with that? You'll still have a set of wings underneath, won't you? I can't do that. I start to laugh. You must be mad. You'd get nowhere. Even if you did get into the air, you'd crash. There are planes that only have one set of wings. I've seen them. Monoplanes, I think you'll find they're called. Cunt. He's right, of course. I just expected him to say something stupid, and reacted immediately without even bothering to stop to think. I have my reply, though. He is not getting away with that. Yes, but a sop with camel with one set of wings? It won't work, sir. Impossible. Suddenly, it all becomes hopeless, pointless, a bleak existence staring at me. I'm switching off now. I can't be bothered. Well, if you're sure. Respond. Yes, sir. Well, I'll just have to see what I can do about it. Anything else? No, sir. Tally-ho then, Jeeves. Tally-ho, sir. I don't bother to salute. There's not too much point, as it's fairly unlikely that Johnson would notice anyway. This is proved by the fact that I've also swiped the pen he was using. It's sitting here, in my pocket. I did it right in front of him. But as I leave, I can't help but notice that he's still sitting at his desk, looking around for it. Out of the corner of my eye, the very last thing I see him do is scratch his head. He scratched his head, for fuck's sake. Only Charlie Chaplin does that, for Christ's sake. The sooner he leaves, the better. I make eye contact and stare out the officer at the desk outside of the flight lieutenant's room. Freak. I've left the building now, and I climb into my Model T Ford. Good, sturdy car this. Except for in the cold weather like this, and it's being a real ass to start. After 5 minutes, I'm out of it, kicking it and shouting at it. I only stop when I really start to hurt my foot. Eventually, I manage to get it going, and I leave Dawes Hill. I'm going into town, and I don't know why I bothered to even get the car started. It's downhill all the way. I could have rolled it down. Toboggan down even. It's snowy enough. I'm going down to High Wycombe. Down to High Wycombe. There's a contradiction in that statement, but it's the truth. The town itself is a bloody contradiction. It's called High Wycombe, and yet it lies at the very bottom of a valley. At either side of the outskirts of the town are hills, forming the Vales. One leads to Marlow, the other leads to Amersham. Both roads at least a mile long in length before they reach the top. Neither of those have high in front of them. High Wycombe, and it lies at the bottom of a bloody valley. It's just a joke. The whole bloody town is a joke. I never chose to live here. I would never be that bloody stupid. I come from Bridgend, in South Wales, and I was stationed there at first. At least they have no bloody pretensions about the valleys. Then the war broke out, and I was moved to France, fighting for king and country. Then, when the war finished, I was relocated again, back here, High bloody Wycombe. Although the war has finished, London is still deemed an area that needs protecting. I'm 30 odd miles out, but that's close enough for me. I know how much London stinks. Now I'm fighting for king and country, in his bloody country, yet there's nothing to fight against. And I'm stuck here, in High Wycombe. Get me out. I reach the pub I've started to frequent, the Wendover Arms. It's just out of town, but that doesn't bother me because it's close to where Deirdre, my girlfriend, lives at 167 Deeds Grove. Tidy little area, bit newer than other parts, which can be quite dangerous at times. I've learnt that lesson before. As I go in, I can see straight away that Connor is in there. Sound chap. Trusted him with my life a few times, but I don't go over immediately. More important matters first. I get to the bar and order a beer. The Irish really do make the best beers. I said that a few times too. By this time, Connor has seen me and is making space for me. I sit down, I pick up the glass, looking around the mess hall. Out of the window at a small army. The small army is preparing itself. Indeed it is. The troops are picking up their weapons, checking everything is in full working order. They are lining up outside in the trenches. There is silence where the bombardment has stopped. There is some hope that maybe the war, too, has stopped. But these are the stupid people. The ones not crushed by the life the war has provided. The others are just delirious, their bodies having gone through more than should ever have been allowed. The whistles floating over the trenches destroy any last hope. This is the life they chose. Now they have to face the consequences. The captain picks up his whistle. He too blows, carrying the signal further down the line. They go up the ladders. They're all completely disorientated at a completely different angle, and they stumble and fall towards where the enemy is. Not much harm may occur this time, but after time it will. And so Connor finishes his story, but my own personal Irish army is on its way to destroy my kidneys, and I realise just how tired I actually am. Looking out of the window, I can see all this. I leave the mess, walking across the parade ground of the Wendover Arms? No? And catch the elevator. But the lift I'm in contains 2 other people. One of them is Mrs. Isnot, my old Welsh teacher at school, already in there, and the other is Sebastian and Sebastian. Well, actually, it's Victor, but it's not, who got in with me. The door closes as we start to go down the floor. We hit the ceiling with a sinking feeling in the stomach as the floor falls away from us. We are only going a floor down, a matter of feet, yet the lift falls for at least 30 seconds. When it stops, we get out and go in to find out why we were called down. I can't see clearly, but I don't notice that. Sebastian and Sebastian does most of the talking, leaving me to sit there and absorb the information. Whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I will know when it needs to be known, but at the moment, it's senseless and unintelligible. I don't know how long we were in there for, but we were back out a few seconds later. Corridors. Which way to go? Could easily get lost in here, and no doubt we will. There's another lift. We go up, being flattened to the floor in the ascent, before hitting the ceiling in the descent. More corridors. Just long, plain, endless, square corridors. I can't see very clearly, but I don't notice that part. We are going down the corridors. We get out. Sebastian and Sebastian has a motorbike. I don't. We zoom along the world I'm in until we get to where we need to go. Of course, we need to kidnap the girl. It is you, Holly, my companion and friend. You've already been kidnapped, though, but we need to save you, so we kidnap you back. A counter-kidnap. We are the good guys. We have the sense of justice here. Sebastian and Sebastian has got you on the back of his motorbike and is leaving. The bad guys are jumping on the back of a bicycle and are in hot pursuit, easily keeping up with Sebastian and Sebastian. I dawdle a bit, unsure of what to do. I decide to follow. I can't, after all, just leave you. I, too, jump on a bicycle and pursue, but I can't keep up. I don't have the power. I can see them fading into the distance, and I can't keep up. All I can hear now is the sound of a motorbike. It matters not too much. I can see an aerial view of the town, but I can't see them. By the sound of a motorbike, I can guess where they are going, but I can't see them. So I go there. I got it wrong. I'm not going to see them ever again. I'm stuck here. What can I do? I can still see the aerial view, but the town is too hilly, stuck here in the valleys. I have no power to get anywhere. I'm never going to see them again. I reach a higher state of consciousness. I can get back to the base where Sebastian and Sebastian will be. But how do I do that? I leave, and I come back. I wake. I am yet to have a first gulp of my beer. The first taste is always the best, with its promises of what is to come later. And that's it. This trip down the pub is as unexciting as exciting isn't. I can see them dying to talk about my business earlier. I can tell by the glances they keep giving me. They must want to save me the embarrassment. I won't get embarrassed, guys. They seem to be talking in some kind of a code, because I can't understand what it is that they're saying at times. General notes. I've talked before about my lack of research and how little I knew of what I was talking about, and this chapter is a very good example. I really have no idea how taking leave in the military works, certainly not 100 years ago, and this left me baffled. This was a pre-Wikipedia age, but still I don't think there would be an article on that matter even today. I could be wrong. Nor did I have anyone to turn to ask about leave, as I didn't know anyone in the military. So I went into that whole issue a bit blind, and to create some kind of sacrifice for Ginger to deal with later when the aliens really do make themselves apparent. Is that a spoiler? I hope not. How much leave is one entitled to? Is 2 weeks even too much? Especially as you want a month in total over prime vacation periods. Having been employed, that's more time off than I was entitled to. And there's another issue I had with the military. I have no idea about the ranks. I needed a superior to Ginger for this and later scenes to work, but where should Ginger lay, and where should his superior be? Here I did do some research online, but the best I was able to find was a chart of the ranks in the Air Force without any explanation of what they actually do. Consequently, Johnson became a flight lieutenant. Previously he was a general, as it didn't seem too high a ranking to take him off the base, and not too low that he wouldn't have any power over Ginger, at least the kind of power I wanted him to have. Turns out that flight lieutenants don't have such a great role these days, but had more power in the early days of the RAF. Wing commander or squadron leader might be better. I guess I felt that the ranks could always be changed later, just as long as the power struggles weren't too affected, as they were the more important thing. Real knowledge could just come along later. Ginger is wanting his plane fixed. Why would he go to the flight lieutenant about that? I have no idea. That's a matter for engineers who would do routine checks. And the way he describes the problems with his plane so vaguely displays my knowledge of machinery in general. That old adage, write about what you know. So, how did I achieve that? Well, I brought in High Wycombe, where I studied at uni and rewrote most of the book. Also, it has a convenient airbase nearby, so I was able to bring in some local knowledge to make the book seem more credible. However, even talking about what I know quickly falls apart. I talk about how Ginger was originally based in Bridgend, the largest town near where I grew up. The nearest base is RAF St Athan, which is a bit away from Bridgend. However, a quick Wikipedia search shows that the base was opened in 1938, 20 years after the setting of my story. So, what about the base in High Wycombe? 1943. Good job, me. Other things that I've found out since then is that the Royal Flying Corps, it changed its name in 1918, at least proving Ginger right on one occasion, one early research victory, consisted of just 5 squadrons before the war. Also, a recent trip to Stonehenge showed me that that was where the RFC was based, certainly around Wiltshire, with an airfield right next to Stonehenge itself. I mean, meters away. Ginger, being a career pilot, so a pilot before the war, would have almost certainly been stationed there, not Bridgend, as there were no bases in Wales. So, though many may scoff at Wikipedia as a research tool, look at the mess that I made without it. And did London need protecting? I have no idea, but it all sounds plausible, and therein lay my strategy. I'm beginning to understand now why I may have failed my history A-level at around that time. I had a growing obsession with silent cinema, which is why Ginger talked about silent movies. Elmo Lincoln was the first Tarzan, and the movie came out early in 1918, proving that I did some research, but only about the things that interested me. Another thing that stands out for me is the opening of this chapter and our first experience of Ginger. Setting him up in such a way to make him so famous does clearly stress his arrogance. But why is he reenacting his famous battle? Who cares? Who are the adoring fans? This leads on to his apparent desire for power, firstly by taking over the flight lieutenant's office, and then becoming king. These are strong desires for Ginger, who I don't remember displays this side of him later on. There was always a question in my mind. Is this demonstration of his flying skills real or not? Is it a hallucination or a dream? I was never certain what it should be, but it certainly doesn't read that way. I guess I wanted to leave it to the reader to decide. But if you're going to be ambiguous, then as a writer, you should be firmly clear about what is ambiguous to the reader. And there are no clues, no context to even bring the question to the reader's mind. We just jump straight in, making it gospel truth. The cutting room floor. What would I change? I'd work on the character of the flight lieutenant and get his ranking right at least. He is really a remnant from the very early versions, and I see so much of the humour of the kind of things I was writing as a teen back then. He is very two-dimensional, which, as a secondary, if not tertiary character, isn't the biggest thing in the world, but I'd like more. He is there for Ginger to bounce off, but he's not giving much for Ginger to bounce off. He is just confused, focusing on singular aspects that are not important to either character, and generally a bit annoying. Stronger challenges would have shown us more of what Ginger was capable of, or even incapable of. I always like the second aspect, as all characters need their boundaries, and whether or not a boundary is transgressed in the 3-act structure of a typical story, it is always good to see more sides to any character. As it is, Ginger is a very arrogant character, thinks much of himself, so it would be nice to see him be knocked down a couple of pegs. Instead, he is talking with a weak character that he is so easily able to outwit that he actually switches off from the conversation. As it is, I'm not keen on the flight lieutenant. Much of the humour is contrived. I was attempting to go for the wacky character that turns up in far too many sitcoms and forcing out the humour. Instead, this scene is quite unnecessary, as does he really have any reason to go visit the flight lieutenant? The whole thing is quite contrived and without any real conflict. Really, this scene is more about an employee checking his holiday request form has been received. The only real point of this section introducing the flight lieutenant is to set up the idea of an alien attack through the rantings of a madman, and to give him some kind of admin role that has some level of power over Ginger. And how does Ginger get away from the base to the pub so easily? That needs working. What did I already change? The main gist of this chapter is pretty much unchanged, including the dialogue, which is barely touched at all, and displays my amazing wit and humour as a 17-year-old. In the old version, it's more about Ginger requesting leave and checking on it, but it's the same conversation about the plane. Also, a few of the descriptions are the same. They are just tucked into Ginger's internal monologue. The descriptions of the room in particular and how the flight lieutenant moves. Basically, the same scene, but much shorter. The bit about High Wycombe and going to the pub are new, as I didn't live in High Wycombe back then, and legally too young for the pub. And the moment when the flight lieutenant begins to fade out of view is new too. The bit with Ginger flying around is also there, as are the adoring fans, but less sexy girls like there are in the nerdy teenage virgin version. And the arrogance is absent in the original version, as well as the desire to rise up to the ranks of the level of king. So not much has changed, just extra details and neuroses. Quote of the day. Today's quote is not reaching the levels of profundity as I would normally search for, but is instead a turn of phrase that stuck out for me due to its necrophiliac nature. I've knocked up 75 kills. To be fair, this line is less to do with setting Ginger up as a sexual deviant, and more, I think, of my mishearing of the phrase to notch up. Back then I didn't know much. I was certainly aware of how to make a woman pregnant, though not through any direct experience, as may already be clear, but the term to knock up hadn't entered my vocabulary. So a happy little accident that brought a smile to my face, if not an attempt at groundbreaking observation. Cheesiest moment. The real, oh God, what was I thinking when I wrote that moment is, well, I actually play up the cheese in this chapter. I always did. The cliches such as spiffing and old bean were deliberate, but it certainly does reach its cheesy heights when Ginger's being carried away from the plane with everybody chanting his name. I don't know why I wanted it to be a cheesy opener. I think I wanted a level of humour to bring people in and didn't know what else to do than challenge people's perceptions of how people spoke at that time and have it contrast with the harshness of Ginger's inner monologue, humanising him and making him more recognisable in his thoughts and speech patterns to us now, 100 years later. But I must concede that I was more likely challenging my own perceptions and making myself realise that people back then were not just cardboard cutouts who used quaint and antiquated words to make contemporary people laugh, as I'd seen so often in comics or sketches. I'm still uncertain of the need for the air show though. That was always there, and obviously I wanted to set Ginger up as a good pilot, but the air show baffles me now. Why I persisted with it for so many years and so many rewrites, I have no ideas now. Perhaps I just wanted to begin with a bit of spectacle. After all, this was originally conceived as a film, not a book. It just seemed a good idea at the time. Unfortunately, that time lasted for a few years. So, OMG, what was I thinking for all that time? Shining light! I don't know why, but I just like the idea of Ginger swiping the pen. A small act of cruelty and vindictiveness that is out of character for Ginger, but opens him up a little. I have no idea why he should do such a thing, and I don't even think I knew it back then. It was just something that needed to be there. In fact, this whole chapter is littered with moments that are unlike Ginger in the rest of the book, at least as I remember him. Turns of phrase borrowed from the stylings of Alex from Clockwork Orange, such as, awfully quickly does it need sorting, his strong sense of entitlement and lust for power and glory. This need to alter the way Ginger spoke resulted from one point of criticism that I actually paid good money for. But one point did stick out that Ginger and our other hero had very similar voices. Fair enough, both of them were my voice, but I needed to find a way of making the two of them sound different. Most attempts at which happened in this chapter. I don't even think I thought about this at the time, but as I was sending the book out to publishers, most of whom require the first 3 chapters, by putting so much effort into Ginger's voice in this chapter, I was helping Ginger stand out more for the publishers. Not that they bit, of course. However, what I was actually doing was reinforcing another piece of criticism that I received. If you are listening to this in the future, and God forbid you are binging on this podcast, you may notice that a lot of the spiffings and old beans drop away in later chapters. My critic notices too. So, by setting up such a strong voice in this first chapter, and then letting that drop as well, I was just creating a very inconsistent character. But we do begin with an awkward character for our hero. Not quite hero, not quite anti-hero. That's my shining light. Psychologist chair. A few things to mention here. I guess the first is the Beatlemania-style reception that Ginger gets after getting out of his plane. That and all the grand desires Ginger reveals. Could it just be possible that I was imagining the kind of admiration and reception that I was hoping to get from publishing this book? I certainly wanted to be famous, and I strongly desired to be the greatest ever author, better even than Shakespeare. I always wondered how it was possible for people to live normal, boring lives without being famous. How could they wake up each morning and not desire huge amounts of attention all the time? Of course, I wasn't famous either, but at least I desired to be famous, and that, somehow, was enough. I knew that fame would one day come, like some kind of inheritance, and now I'm doing it again, trying to be famous. Even when working in stores, I liked the attention. Behind the counter, I was in the spotlight. I was looking at the queues, they were looking at me. Having difficult customers meant I could argue with them, telling them how their complaint was wrong and playing up to the waiting people. A couple of times I got a round of applause from the audience, people waiting in the queue, and the adrenaline rush was amazing. When I couldn't even be a store assistant anymore, I became a teacher instead. Teaching English. Trying to get attention away from smartphones and onto me is a daily battle, so I become a performing monkey, and I love that attention. So there we go. There's my confession. I'm a shameless fame whore. But that isn't the focus of this segment. What is going on towards the end of the chapter? Ginger encounters 2 fantasies whilst in the pub, and he hasn't even had anything to drink. Though that's misleading, as he states he has drunk after the first fantasy, but not after the second. So, we've established a very reliable narrator here, and a poor continuity editor in me. The first fantasy of him in the trenches turns out to be a story told by Connor that Ginger has placed himself into, seeing it as Connor did, and it isn't too revealing. But it leads to the question. If Connor is ground infantry and Ginger a pilot, how do they know each other? Secondly, does one bring up what is perhaps the most traumatic event of their life so casually in a pub, and to someone it's unlikely they know well, only by name, which is the strength of a relationship revealed by Ginger? One must assume that they know each other more intimately than that. And you know what people say about assumptions. They make an arse out of you, an umption. Well, Connor is just another voice in Ginger's head. The second major fantasy is more revealing now, and I do remember it was a dream that I had that I wrote into the story. This happens a lot, but Ginger experiences it as some kind of hallucination. It may just be that he actually is asleep and dreaming, but that's all part of the ambiguity that I never worked out for myself. What I find interesting about this hallucination is that there is a large dramatic irony. Ginger, who builds himself up as his great hero and celebrity, becomes almost completely passive and lacking control of the situation. Sebastian and Sebastian is our hero here. A name given to him in my dream, and a name that I love. He's based on a friend of mine from school, but I forget who that is now. Still, names are changed, I don't remember who it is, and it's a dream, clearly not based on reality, so no one can sue for recognising themselves in that bit. Holly has been kidnapped. They are there to rescue her. Fair enough, I can easily interpret that as trying to reclaim a love that has been lost, fighting for the cause. It's an anxiety dream about losing a love. But Sebastian and Sebastian is the one in control. Ginger is quiet. Ginger rides on Sebastian and Sebastian's motorbike. Upon rescuing Holly, of which little information is given, it's just accepted as dream rules allow, Sebastian and Sebastian takes her away, leaving Ginger to try and catch up on the bicycle. Even by taking an aerial view, he can't find them. He is powerless and he accepts his defeat. In fact, he is so passive that when Sebastian and Sebastian takes her away from him, He doesn't immediately pursue, but dawdles, wondering whether or not to go after them. How weak is this character that he will almost allow his desire to slip away from him? So what was my unconscious trying to tell me? That anyone I love will always be taken by a different suitor? Was my esteem so low at that point that even my inner self was telling me to give up and remain a virgin forever? Seems that way. It's nice to know that even my own brain was against me. Perhaps, though, I was telling myself that this person I desired was not really worth the effort. Earlier I posed a question. How did Ginger get away from the base to the pub so easily? Well, this is where I was getting too big for my boots. And another ambiguous point that I was never clear of myself. Is the whole sequence in the pub reality or not? Thereby meaning Ginger is having a dream inside of a dream. If so, which part of him is having the anxiety, and is the anxiety real? And as Ginger's anxiety was really my own anxiety, by writing it into fiction in the first place, am I giving up ownership of it by projecting it onto someone else? But then, if it's a dream within a work of fiction, was I just attempting to play down the anxiety and to mock it? Put it in its place. Returning to the text and the is it a dream within a dream point, well, the whole thing got a bit meta and a bit complicated for me. And so, once again, I decided to leave the whole thing up to the reader, without ever really posing the question in their head. But there is one clue. Maybe I'm stretching for this, and it revolves around Connor, who becomes one of Ginger's squadron. Either Connor turned from infantryman to pilot, or this is a deception designed to plant the idea this is all a hallucination in your head. Honestly, I have no idea now. Farewell! Well, at least we got a good full introduction to Ginger, from his highs to his lows, and all the time he is passive, taking no more initiative and control than by swiping a pen. And as a chapter, it gets to display the digressions that will become a big part of the book, if not the story. Want to be like Ginger? Then be passive, and don't check me out on Facebook or Twitter at danielsnemesis, no apostrophe, and don't subscribe. Don't leave your own interpretations, and don't say anything positive. No, do. Definitely say something positive. Read between the lines of sarcasm and know that I want positive comments. I'm negative enough as it is. Of course, should you subscribe, you really can be passive and allow the internet to download the next and all future episodes onto your listening device. And your control is by clicking on that subscribe button. Whatever you choose to do, we'll be meeting William, our alien hero, next week, as he has a bit of an existential crisis, and finds a convenient way to describe what he looks like, so the readers get an image of what his alien race are like. Thank you very much for listening. See you again soon. Take care. And just in case you're wondering, all text was written by me, danielsnemesis, and XBook is purely a work of fiction and is not meant to be based on anyone or any events at all. The music was also by me, danielsnemesis, as was the image that accompanies this podcast. It sucks, doesn't it? But there we go.